fearing doing something that is not perfect can create an enormous amount of anxiety and stressors for you, as well as making you feel extremely isolated. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The many, many reasons as to why perfectionism is not a thing that you should ever strive for, nor does it even exist. Welcome to episode 92 of the Positivity Experience. Perfectionism does not exist, so stop seeking it. Check it out. Hey everybody, and welcome back to episode 92 of the Positivity Experience. It's your girl Lori, and boy, I'm excited to talk to you about perfectionism this week. But first and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out to our newest Patreon members. At our gratitude level, we have Carmen, Nadine, Izzy, and Colleen, and at our abundance level, we have Kimberly Hicks. Thank you guys so much. If you guys are wondering what the Patreon is, it's a paid subscription on the Patreon app that you can download anywhere. And you get an extra episode a week. And this week's episode is going to be on grief, processing grief, what it looks like, what grief is, expectations on grief, various things like that. But we're here today. Oh, and if you are interested in that, there's always a link in the show notes, no matter where you're listening to this podcast. Or you can just go to Patreon/Lori Wheeler, find me there. But I am so excited to talk to you guys about this because I've talked about perfectionism before, but I really wanted to kind of do an updated version just so you would have it. A lot of times people don't go all the way back in a podcast. So I wanted to jump on here to remind you that perfectionism is not real. It is not real. And I will scream that from the top of the mountaintops. And you have to stop striving for something that literally is not achievable. You cannot achieve this level of perfectionism. Let's pretend though for 2 seconds that whatever your version of perfect is, you've achieved that. Okay. Let's just pretend that that could happen. And you're like, cool, I got it. Well, number one, you're not going to be satisfied. Now you're going to have to maintain this level of perfectionism. You're going to be like, oh my God, okay, well now what do I do? You're going to be constantly on high alert. You're going to be super stressed that you're going to like mess it up because you're not perfect anymore. So you have to understand that psychologically, now, while perfectionism is not a classified mental health issue, it is attributed to OCD and or OOPD, right? And so you have to understand, and that's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So you have to understand that that doesn't mean that that's what you have, but it's a good indication to maybe talk to your doctor and see like what he or they recommend, because it can be helped. But also with your cognitive therapy, with understanding and radically accepting that it just doesn't exist. And honestly, and it sounds silly, and a lot of people don't realize this, but when you have a perfectionist behavior, it is linked, and it is always linked to insecurity and or sometimes a combination of low self-esteem, right? Because literally think about that. Perfectionism is never going to be good enough for you because you're always going to need to keep getting to that next level. I'm not asking you not to have goals, but I'm asking you to fall deeply in love with the process of whatever this journey is. So if you were told growing up, and I'll tell you where the perfectionism rolls into from the insecurity perspective. Think about, let's say you were growing up and your bed wasn't made the quote unquote right way, which please keep in mind, there's no such thing as right and wrong. It is, or good and bad. There's 100,000 different gray areas. It's extremely fluid. But let's say you were raised and you were told that the way that you made your bed was wrong. The way that you did whatever you did was completely wrong. You did it incorrect. Well, now that's going to make you second guess everything, even though you're like, I'm giving my best, like I'm doing everything I can, but yet it's not good enough. Well, that's going to build this thing up where you never feel like you're good enough and that you can never achieve it. However, to the naked eye, it may look like you have it together because you're constantly needing your house to be specific and meticulous, and this needs to be in order and that needs to be in order and this. And I don't mean just where you're like, oh my God, it looks clean and neat. I mean where you have to have that, because if somebody comes over and judges you, because that's what your biggest fear is. Your fear is judgment or disapproval. And here's the thing, and I will say this to you on every platform and every time we speak. Stop worrying about what other people think of you, because they can only give you their approval and give you their positive reassurance when and only when they agree with it or it's in alignment with what they're saying. Okay, so you have to understand that in that fear of judgment, that could be from early childhood, right? And let's say as a young child, you had these expectations, super high expectations. Now, if you throw OCD into that, or anxiety, or various other things, that becomes the vicious cycle. So here's the thing, and I've said this before, what everybody's separate version of perfect is, whatever that exists, is right for them, is perfect for them, right? And I've used this example. For me, I live in the Northeast in the US, and it's beautiful. Like we have 4 seasons. In the month of October, it's my version of perfect weather. It's like 60, 65. It can be overcast. I can have a fire. It smells crisp. The leaves are falling from the trees. I adore that. Or being up in the mountains, that is perfect to me. However, somebody else might say, well, I mean, that's nice. I like it. But I think being at the beach is perfect. Well, that's fine. And I know that that's a little different than other things in your life, but it does pertain to everything in your life. So you may say, for me, I have to have my cabinets organized. I have to do this. All of these things need to happen. I mean, that's great for your mental health, honestly, right? It is great for your mental health until this is where that really fine line of going left to right is. In that fine line of saying, okay, I like it to be neat and tidy just because it feels comfortable and relaxing, versus I can't sit down and for an entire day do nothing but watch Netflix because I feel like I have to keep doing stuff around the house. That's not healthy. That is not healthy, because you should be able to realize, hey, you know what? If you left a couple dishes in the sink overnight, so what? But if you lose your mind about it and you go, oh my God, I can't do that. Oh my God, I can't do that. Now you know now we're knowing where that falls into a not so healthy pattern. Right? And so, this is important for you to understand, because you're striving for something. And here's the other piece of that. It can also be extremely stressful for you in the aspect that you're going to now expect other people to do this level of perfectionism. And that's not it. And think about this. If you have PP, but I shortened it, but perfection personality, you're striving for flawlessness. So you're going to fixate on all of the things in your life that you're doing wrong. You're going to try to control constantly. You're going to be super critical of other people, and definitely of self, but also of other people. Well, what are they doing? They're doing that wrong. No, they're not. No. And that's where you have to realize it's great to have high standards for yourself or high goals for yourself. Make them realistic. You can't be self-critical, and you can't be critical of others. And when I tell you it's not a great thing, it will negatively impact your life. Literally, you think you could have the beautifulest house on the planet. You could be doing all of these things. And perfectionism goes into all or nothing thinking. So if it's, I'm going to go balls to the wall, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do all of this. But if you don't quite get it done when you said you're going to do it, oh my God, well, look at me, I'm a failure. Because even if you did so good, you made a big dent into the goal that you wanted to do for the weekend. You made the big dent into it. Okay? But you didn't do everything you wanted to do. No, now you failed. No, you didn't. It's great to be a high achiever. It's beautiful. But to think all or nothing, there are 50 shades of gray plus. Pick a few of them and live there. Also, if you have perfectionism personality, you're sitting there and you are so you're big into these accomplishments of you, which is great. But yet you want to tell everybody how perfect you are, or you want them to tell you, oh my God, that's amazing. You're looking for validation. However, let's say you see somebody and it doesn't align with what your version of perfect is. Now you're being hypercritical. You're going to point it out too. You're gonna be like, well, I don't know. I mean, you should have done that. I mean, did you see? I see you made the bed, but it's not like tight. It's not taut over here. No. And remember that when you're a perfectionist, you're not looking at the positive, especially for yourself, but especially for other people. You're looking at the imperfections. You're being more judgmental. You're fearing failure. You refuse to do the failure. You don't like the mistakes. Oh my God, you need to embrace that. You can't grow and you can't achieve this level of success that you're seeking without having that. Okay, and here's another thing. If you are allowing yourself to be confident and comfortable in the baby steps, that's beautiful, Because you will go forward, you'll go backwards. You'll go forward, you'll go backwards, but you'll get there on time. And here's the thing. If you are in perfectionism, you're going to be in fear of those baby steps, in fear of sliding back. But here's the reality. You cannot just constantly be on go forward mode. You have to go backwards in order to implement some of the tools in which you learn. Everybody can do something good when things are going good. And then there's the thing of you setting these unrealistic expectations and standards for yourself and others, as well as not allowing yourself to see anything outside of that level of perfectionism in your mind. And they're just like not reasonable. Now, if you're a high achiever and you're like, oh my God, that's fun. I'm going to go do these things. Oh, haha, okay, I didn't do that done, but it's fine. I'll achieve it. That's cool. That's called being like flexible. That's called being in the moment. But if you have this unrealistic standard that you're going to make X amount of dollars this month, you're going to clean the house this month, you're going to do this month, you need to do this, you have to purge, okay, never going to happen. And very often, if you are a perfectionist, you're going to actually fear the success. Because if you fear the success, you're afraid to achieve it because you're like, okay, well, now what? Like you feel like you always have to be goaling for something. And while you should always want a goal on something, like you always want to have a goal, if that is your main focus, thinking that end result is the quote unquote perfectionism, yeah, that's a skewed cognitive distortion. You have to remember that the baby steps, and that's why if you're only focusing on the results, it's going to get you in the stomach every single time. Oh, look at the results. And you're not going to want to do the little things, right? That's what we call attention to detail. You're not going to want to do the detail because you're like, ugh, I just want to get to the result. Well, you can't, because literally, if I gave you, let's say I gave you the happy stick. Boom, I hit you. Here's the happy stick. I beat you over the head with a happy stick. You're super happy. You feel good. But the reality is you're still going to feel empty because you still haven't processed your stuff, right? So then that's going to give you depression and stress if you didn't meet that goal. So if you feel as though, okay, well, I'm focusing on this goal, I didn't meet it, or I didn't achieve it, or maybe I couldn't achieve it, or for whatever reason it never happened, you're going to constantly now be in this depressional state thinking, I knew I wasn't good enough. And that's important. You know, and again, I go back to that failure. The failure is beautiful. It's not scary. So what? Things don't work out. Okay, get up, dust your shoulders off. I've said it before. You've survived 10 million days of your negative days. You've survived them. And here's the funny thing. You'll also catch and see this within yourself. You're going to be defensive. So if you're going to respond destructively, and I say destructively because it's very defensive is destruction, it's going to be something that, like, if somebody says, oh, well, I don't know that was right, or I didn't like how you did that, and you think that it's perfect, or you're struggling with accepting that it's not perfect, but it is what it is, you're going to get defensive. So if you're defensive because somebody is criticizing you, even if it's constructive criticism, like that's the positive criticism, and then you go, no, because you already feel some kind of way about it. It's like you don't realize how much valuable information you're missing by not allowing people to have an opinion. Now, you don't have to take that opinion, and they're allowed that space, but why? What's the defensiveness? You cannot achieve perfection. Let me be the first person to tell you at 13 minutes and 55 seconds of this podcast. It doesn't exist. So stop holding people and yourself to some weird standard that's not real. You're literally goaling for a mystical idea. And here's the funny thing. Because you're such a perfectionist, very often, and it seems like they don't go hand in hand, you're going to procrastinate. You're like, wait, what? Like if I need it to be perfect, why do I procrastinate? Again, because if you look at it and you don't have a plan, you're not doing the baby steps, you're not doing the micro goaling, you're not allowing yourself to give yourself time. You only want the results. You don't want the process, right? So let's say I hired a maid, a cleaning person, to come in and do your entire house, organize you, everything. I mean, boom, just right now, here you go. You're like, oh my God, that'd be great. Yeah. But you still haven't solved the issues within yourself. So that's not going to be maintained. You're going to be like, oh my God, it's great. But knowing that you're a perfectionism, a perfectionist, you're going to go behind them in a way and be like, that's kind of streaky. That's this. Now you're going to start being hypercritical. And because you haven't addressed the deeper rooted issue behind the perfectionism, you're going to fall back into that category again. Right? So you have to understand that when you procrastinate, it is detrimental to productivity. Like, we already understand that. But if you are not able to adjust, like, because things are going to change, right? Your version of perfect, nobody else cares about. Nobody cares what your version of perfect is. No one cares what your timeline is. So people aren't going to fall into line, so to speak. And if you can't adjust to that, or if you're like, oh my God, I only plan for plan A because this is what it is, then you're not going to do anything. You know what I'm saying? Then you're going to be like, well, fine, screw it. I'm not going to do it at all. That's all black or white thinking. So you can see how the all or nothing thinking and the defensiveness and the procrastination goes into that. Because very often you're going to be like, okay, well, I want to do this, but if I fail at it, I'd rather not do it. I want to do it, but I'd rather not do it, because if I fail at it, then I can't say that I didn't achieve it. Do you see what I'm saying? Do you see where that cognitive comes into play? And I'm telling you, like I said, there is absolutely a huge indicator of low self-esteem with that. Because when you think that you can be perfect and other people can validate that, that means that you're still looking for an external source to give you that self-esteem. And I will say this so much. You cannot heal outside in. You have to heal inside out. And here's the thing about being a perfectionist. You can push people away. You can push people away, because if everything they do, it's always like you picking it apart, right? Let's say don't set that glass there. What are you doing? Put that pillow back. Wait, that doesn't belong there. Like, it's one thing to be like, hey, this is where this has a home and all that stuff. If you're constantly nitpicking and you're being super critical because they're not following suit and you're expecting you out of somebody else, now you're going to push them away. And now somehow or another, you're going to blame that person, or you're going to blame other people for not understanding you. But because they didn't do it the way that you wanted to do it. So again, like I said, you're worried about the fear of judgment, but yet you're sitting in criticism of other people. You have to be careful of that. And, that's what I said. I mean, it's one of those things that, yes, is it psychologically proven that having a neat and tidy, I didn't say specifically like you're walking into a model home, neat and tidy and organized home, does that contribute to a healthier mindset? Yes, it does. However, if that's your main focus, and if things are a little awry, you lose your mind behind it, that's not so good. That's not so good. But see, you have to accept yourself. See, the problem is you don't accept yourself. So you're waiting for everybody else to accept you so you can achieve some weird level of acceptance through the perfectionism. But if you have a mom who does something, a sister who does something differently, and both of their versions of perfectionism you're trying to achieve, that's going to be really hard. So that's why you can't compare yourself to other people. Your way of doing things is your way of doing things. Now, that's why you have to watch your dialogue with yourself, your mental dialogue. If you're constantly like, this sucks, I suck at this, I'm going to fail, okay, that's not going to serve your best and highest good. And if you do fail, so what? So what? But you don't go comparing yourself to other people. Don't look, I'm telling you, sometimes my bed's going to be made, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes there's going to be dishes in the sink, sometimes there isn't. And if your version of perfectionism is no dishes are ever in the sink, and you come to my house, well, that's on you. I'm not going to worry about your perspective of me, because I'm going to do me. But that's what I'm saying. If you're practicing the mindfulness and you're sitting in the present space and you're allowing yourself to be in that moment, and you're allowing yourself to accept that perfectionism's not real. I mean, it's literally not real, because everyone else's version of that is vastly different. So stop trying to achieve something to make people love you, right? Because you have, basically there's like 3 or 4 types of perfectionism, the self one, where you're like, I need to do this, I need to do that. Socially, well, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And of course, if it's like mom or dad, right? So that's external. This is why you need to detox your social media. I mean, there's 100 million reasons why you need to detox your social media. I've told you guys this before. At most, the entire day, at most, I'm on the social medias. That's right, media is plural. Like 60 minutes. And that's for everything, all day, unless I'm doing my lives. And there's a reason for it, because some of what you see isn't going to be real to you. And if you feel insecure and you feel some kind of way, you don't judge the person for posting it. You just don't need to engage with it. But you need to stop thinking that everything you see is people's joy and their happiness. You don't know what's going on behind there. So don't look at someone and go, I need to strive to do that because they're perfect. People aren't perfect. Stop idolizing people. Stop idolizing things. Stop it. I mean, I said rule of thumb, there is a saying, and I did a TikTok on this. Be careful of meeting your idols because they'll disappoint you. Well, it's not their fault. It's your expectation of them. Like literally, when I was living in Manhattan, and I tried out for all my children, and, there were some actors there that were like, the evil actors or, the people who were like the bad guys. And we were talking and, they said like people will literally walk up on them on the street and like start yelling at them. They're like, dude, I'm playing a character. Sometimes people can't get in their head that person is just a character. They are human. They go to the bathroom the same way. Most of them are going to put on their pants the same way. They're going to have issues. Maybe they're not going to be faithful to their spouses. Maybe they're going to do all that. They're in the public eye. So it's going to be hypercritical. But why? Why are you in their business? If you like their movie, barring them doing something like really bad, like, abusing animals or being racially injustice and, but I mean, like if they have something weird going on in their personal life, you can still watch their movies. It's okay. And honestly, if you don't, they don't care. Sometimes you think that, your opinion and your stance on certain things because you don't like it because your husband cheated on you or your wife cheated on you, that if you stand your ground, and you have all the right to not, if you're like, I can't support that, then you don't have to. But don't think that that's going to give you the outcome in which you seek. But it may protect your peace. So it's working in that area to understand that, you know what? You may never please your mom. You may never please your boss. You may never please anybody. If you keep trying to do that, you're going to definitely not please yourself. I can promise you that. So then, whatever your version of perfectionism is, you reach that and it's going to be brief. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be lonely because, again, your version of perfectionism and this needs to be in a place and this needs to be a place, this needs to be meticulous, that will push people away. People don't want to constantly hear you criticizing the fact that they can't do something right. And that's vice versa. If someone is in constant criticism of you and you can see that they're in their perfectionism, you don't judge it. You never judge it because they're just in a different space of their healing. However, you don't have to rock with it. And you can say, hey, you know what? I cannot have this conversation with you. You're right. You can have whatever it is that you want, but I'm not going to stand here and have this discussion with you. See, you have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to disconnect. And the question is are you? And many people go, yeah, I am. Well, and I will say this, I say it to every client I start working with, and I'll tell you guys the same thing. When you start your healing journey, you will lose people. Well, you're not really losing people. You don't own them, but they will distance. Or you will distance. You won't even know you're doing it. Sometimes you will, but sometimes you won't. Because you're not going to be accessible to the person like you once were. So now I'm going to go back to the question and ask you, are you willing to live your life that maybe is just imperfect, just perfectly imperfect? Are you willing to do that while disappointing somebody else because they're stuck in their perfectionism? That's something for you to get really deep with yourself in. Because so many people say, I want to feel better, I want to be balanced, I want to be peaceful, but you want it to kind of be the same way, and then you want everybody to support you, and you want everybody to kind of change. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. So you have to be willing to let go of the idea of what you think it is, because now you're focusing on perfectionism in a relationship, in any of your relationships. Well, this is how I want it to be, and this is how it should be. And this says who? It should be that way because why? There's no gold standard for perfectionism. There's also no gold standard on relationships. So if it doesn't work for you, you got to stop trying to force it. You never want to beg somebody to be with you. You never want to change who you are for another human, nor expect them to do the same. You have to accept it for what it is. Because now, and I know you've seen this, it might be you and it might be people you know. They want to put on a happy face when they're out with the family because they want the image of them to be perfect. Know that I am a good parent. I am a good partner. I've got my stuff together. And yeah, it doesn't matter what other people think. And at the end of the day, you're not perfect. And that's acceptance. Stop goaling and trying to achieve something that is literally, it does not exist. I've said it a lot because I'm trying to get it to you. Your version, their version, different, but both right. And that's ego. When you can't, now it's ego on top of, like I said, it could be, don't go self-diagnosing, could be related to OCD. It could also be related to some past traumas, some insecurity, and some low self-esteem. We know where it comes from, but remember, that's a reason, not an excuse. So you have to be really careful of using your reasonings and then allowing them to be an excuse. And you can't throw your perfectionism on someone and go, well, I can't help it. Well, you can. You just have to get the work done. Like you have to be willing to go through it. So you have to be very careful of not assuming that people have to walk on eggshells because of your insecurity, because of your childhood, and they need to fall in suit. Well, now that's prison, not relationships. So I want you to check yourself. This is a little call to action here. Where do you struggle with perfectionism? And what do you think that you're going to achieve when you get there? Because you're not going to achieve happiness because you're looking externally again. Oh, what, for somebody to say you have a beautiful home? That's nice. Someone say, wow, you're really organized. That's cool. But then you're up till 3:00 in the morning trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to clean? What do I need to do? Okay, that doesn't mean anything. I would much rather you be a little messy and super balanced. Just peace, love, and happiness. Fly by the seat of your pants. I promise you, the relationships are so much stronger when you're willing to just, hey man, let's do this. I promise you that. You're trying too hard to achieve something that doesn't exist. So ask yourself where you struggle with that perfectionism. I'd love to hear it. Like, I do this automatically goes over to YouTube too. I'd love to hear it over there. Drop some comments in there. I want to know where you struggle with it. And we can work on it. You can always book a session with me or we can go deeper in other podcasts on it. But it does go into acceptance. It's always going to go into acceptance and lowering your ego. Accepting that, you know what? Your best friend does something different than you. It's okay. If it really doesn't align with you, then you're going to have to distance. And this is the not so fun part of it, to be honest with you. But, sometimes when you're the one that's a little further along, I don't want to say further along, but on a different part of that journey, right? When you're on a different part of that journey, sometimes you are the person that has to make the moves. You are the person that has to do the disconnecting, or you are the person who has to do more of the work. That's just life. I think the problem is people look for this weird 50-50 thing, and 50-50 things don't really exist either. You might have those days, but there's going to be days that you need somebody to pick up the slack and you need to pick up their slack. And when you're first starting this journey and on this journey, and that's the other thing, people don't have to be on the same journey as you. They don't have to want to grow. They don't have to want to heal. They don't have to. So then you have to decide, going back to what I said before on this journey, if in fact that's where they want to be and that's where they're going to remain, then you decide what role they play. You can't change the people, but you can change the role in which they play in your life without judgment. You don't get to judge and go, I don't understand. I don't understand why they want to be so miserable. It's not for you to understand. Why do you think you have to understand everybody? That's not entitled to you. So I want you to check yourself on your perfectionism, because remember, every human being on this planet has a different version, quote unquote, of perfectionism. And it's not right, it's not wrong. It's just for the person. And allow yourself, fine, be neat, be organized, do those things. But pump your brakes, calm down, leave some dishes in the sink. It's literally okay. I promise you the world will not explode because you have dishes in the sink overnight. Promise. And if you feel it's real problematic, definitely talk to your doctor. because an OCD diagnosis may not be far off in that future. And that's okay. But don't go judging it and don't go like self-diagnosing from this podcast. I'm saying if you struggle with feeling like you're a perfectionist and you feel like perfectionism is really holding you back, you definitely want to talk to your doctor about it. So your goal this week and every day after, and come back and listen to, as a matter of fact, I had a client yesterday tell me they like to listen to the podcast more than once because, there's a lot that you get from the first time and then you go back and you might get more. But, it's important that you understand it's progress, baby. Don't crap on the baby steps. Stop wasting time rushing. Stop being impulsive because you're trying to get to the result. If you can't enjoy the destiny, good God, if you can't enjoy the journey, that is the destination. But if you can't enjoy the journey and you can't appreciate how much time it's going to take, and that means you may not know. You have to let go of the control of knowing. You're going to have to be okay with change. You're going to have to be okay with plan A just not going as plan A. I mean, you cannot be. It's not going to change. It's not going to stop because you're in a mood. Acceptance. But from this point forward, baby, it's all about progression, not perfection. And allow others to find their way. And if it does not serve you, distance. And if you do not serve them, they have every right also to distance themselves.